Hey everyone, Christopher Carter and Stephen Thompson, your Pitt beat reporters here at Peterson Event Center. We're changing up this week. This is our Pitt mailbag show for the Post-Gazette, but we're doing it from the Peterson Event Center after Pitt has beaten Gardner Webb. We've been working, we've been writing our stories. We figured let's knock out the mailbag, answer some of your questions right here on air. As always, you can get this show every Tuesday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel to get all of our Pittsburgh Post-Gazette sports writers content. Steven, we got a lot of questions here, and we're going to start off with this question from Todd. Excuse me as I manage this show from my laptop right on camera. But Todd asked, what's the best and worst things about Pitt basketball as they get ready to head for the Backyard Brawl? That's this Friday, Steven. Pitt's 3-0, West Virginia's 2-0. They play Iona Wednesday night. I'll let you start. What's the best thing about Pitt basketball right now?
Yeah, I think it's their versatility on offense. I mean, you've got not only a trio of guards and Jaland Lowe and Ish Leggett, Damian Dunn, who can light up the scoreboard, but then you've also got Cam Corrin, who's a really nice interior presence in the post, and Guillermo Diaz-Graham can shoot it from three. They got Amsal Delalic back this game. He can shoot it. They assume that he can get back fully healthy. There are a lot of different options in a lot of ways that they can score. They had some trouble with the zone tonight against Gardner Webb. I've wrote about that in my analysis piece that you can read on the Post Gazette tomorrow. But they've shown a lot of different ways that they can score and a lot of ways they can beat you on offense. What do you think is the worst part?
Oh, that's the thing. That's their potential is there, but they have to do it consistently. And I don't think we've really seen that yet in any of the three games. And Jeff Capel's kind of harped on it. He's talked about how Pitt has had lulls and they've had and everyone has like their slow points. Other teams are going to go on runs, but offensively they need to be more consistent. And there's times where I think they rely a little bit too much on just skill to win in certain points. They need to have points where like, hey, we're going to cut these runs off a little bit shorter, get rid of these droughts. Even in this game, and I wrote that about my game story, they had multiple lulls in this game. One big one at the end of the first half, and then two in the earlier parts of the second half that allowed Gardner Webb to hang around a little bit. Now, eventually Pitt would turn it on, they'd get strong, but as Jeff Capel noted, even his bench guys didn't come in and give the best effort that he wanted in the final minutes of the game. They allowed a 27-point lead to dwindle down to less than 20, and he doesn't like to see that. And I think that's what Jeff Capel's pushing these guys for. But hey, these are three early games. There's a lot of new faces on this team. They're gelling. They're finding their way.
And it's easy, I think, when you're playing a low or a mid-major opponent to say, to kind of take your foot off the gas once you build a big lead. To think that you can just kind of overwhelm these guys with your skill and your size, which Pitt has done in a lot of these games. But you want to build good habits, especially when you've got 5 of your next 6 or 6 of your next 7 against power conference opponents, and a lot of them coming away from home. You got to make sure that offense travels.
Absolutely. Let's get to another question. This one comes from Brandon. What's Amsul Delalich's role on the team when healthy? Amsul Delalic, of course, the Bosnian recruit and signee that Pitt brought in during the offseason. He's a freshman, but he's an international professional player. I believe he's 21 years of age. So he's a bit of a different kind of a freshman, but he's 6'7". He was supposed to be a deep shooter. Steven, we got our first look at him, and he did hit a 3-pointer. He also had a couple assists. What's your first impression of Delalic?
Yeah, I think he's a really intriguing prospect. I mean, he's got nice form in his shot. Like Jeff Capel said, he seemed a little bit rushed. I mean, he hadn't played basketball in about a month, getting up and down the floor, so that's understandable. But you see that he has got nice form on his jump shot. He can handle the ball a little bit. He's got some size. The thing is, he plays a position. He's kind of more of a guard, I think, but he's got, a little bit of a wing too. He plays some crowded positions. There aren't obvious minutes there. So I think he's really going to have to shoot the ball well if he can be really consistent on that end. He's got a lot of minutes coming his way. Um, the ball handling's kind of taken care of. If he can pass, shoot, I think he's going to really bring something on the offensive end. Don't really know what he's going to be defensively, but shooting the ball and passing the ball, that's going to be how he gets on the floor and stays on the floor for Pitt.
Look, a 6'7" guy with a good wingspan, ability to shoot from the outside. If he brings the defense and he passes the way we saw tonight and he shoots like we've seen him shoot in his highlights from international, that could be a serious threat that they will find a way to use. It's just going to be about how quickly can he input himself into the system and the way that Pitt basketball wants to play. Let's switch it over to football now. We go to some of our questions we received from you. This one comes from Twitter from West Virginia has never won the Big 12. That's an interesting name. But why does Pitt football stink now? And it's so funny that a fan account that's coming out of West Virginia is saying, why does Pitt football stink now? And listen, they're 7-2. And Stephen, and you and I were talking about this as we were leaving Acrisure Stadium. Like, this team is still in the middle of a really good year, really good rebound year. But these last two games that they've lost to SMU and Virginia have been clunkers. In your assessment, why does Pitt football stink in their last two games?
Well, the offense isn't really complementing the defense, right? Like every time, the defense comes with a stop or forces a turnover or something, the offense hasn't been able to capitalize on it and put points on the board, put touchdowns on the board, especially. So there hasn't been complementary football. It's not playing off of each other. We've talked extensively about this. I mean, there are the drops, there's the protection issues. There's Eli Holstein missing some layups when they are open. There's it's really a full team effort. The failures on offense over the past, you could go even back 4 weeks or so. But I think mostly it's how the offense is playing off of the defense. I mean, even in that Syracuse game, you saw it a little bit, but it just hasn't been very efficient from the offense and not efficient at the right times.
Yeah, that's my problem with this is that I think the defense has really stepped up.
Yeah.
That was the big thing that I was thinking that like if Pitt was going to make a real run and beat Sirius at the second half of the season, this defense needed to be so much better than it was in the first half of the season. That has happened, but the problem is while that's happened, the offense has regressed. Eli Holstein is not seeing the field as confidently as I thought he was in several of his early games. The run game has not manifested into more. The offensive line has not coalesced the way that I thought they could. And now you're starting to see inconsistencies pop up in places where it wasn't even popping up. Like before, this was a very sure-handed receiving unit, and they had what 5, 6, 7 drops in this last game. Like that's something that did not happen before. And for me, when you see this Pitt offense struggling at quarterback, struggling at offensive line, struggling at skill player positions, it's no wonder that they're struggling as an entire offense right now. And that's why I think that they struggle right now is that if they had that offense even performing mildly well compared to where they started the season, this team they still would have lost to SMU, but they wouldn't have lost to Virginia. They'd be 8-1, still ranked, and still in the conversation for an ACC championship bid and a college football playoff bid.
Yeah, I think also when you talk about the offensive line, I mean, there have been some injuries there. They've had to shuffle things around, but they've also committed a ton of penalties too.
Yeah.
And Pat Narduzzi alluded to that today, or talked directly about it today in his press conference this morning. It's just got to be cleaner. They got to help themselves out more. No one has to be Superman as much as everyone's just kind of got to do their job.
Well, let's get into Justin's question that sent us in, which addresses the offensive line. Pitt used its fourth different offensive lineman with Isaiah Montgomery at right tackle, Enos at left guard, and Barrett at left tackle. It didn't go very well. Are these changes going to be permanent? Stephen, I think that Pat Narduzzi has been pretty clear. They're looking for an answer there. I don't expect that to be permanent, but I do expect the constant changes to be permanent until the fact that they are changing lineups until they find something that sticks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit before, but there aren't a ton of obvious upgrades waiting for them on the bench. I mean, I don't think Ryan Bears had the best season that he could possibly have. I mean, the rotating guys, Jason Collier and Ryan Jacoby, have not been great either. And then obviously you have Branson Taylor out. So Isaiah Montgomery was kind of thrown into a bad situation. The same thing with Terrence Enos, but they're going to keep rotating these guys through. I don't think Pat Narduzzi is necessarily married to any of these guys at any certain position. He's just trying to find a right combination that can work in any sense because there's just been really a whole lot of nothing from the offensive line all season long.
Matt Gonsalves and Carter Warren are not walking through that door. So they need to find answers, and that's going to be a big part of this offense moving forward. Let's get to our last question here. This one comes from Doug. It seems odd to me that Pitt football hasn't been adding new plays as the seasons progressed. Any thoughts on that, or if you guys agree, or why? Stephen, as a person who watches a lot of tape and studies it and breaks things down, I think that there's been new wrinkles in the offense. The problem is that they're not hitting on them. And like I don't put this as much on because like obviously alluding to play calling there's an attack on Kade Bell. And I think that there's things that could be better. I think that there are certain concepts that have been a little bit repetitive, but like there were plenty of opportunities for Eli Holstein to hit wide open wide receivers. There were also opportunities that Eli Holstein hit that like Poppy Williams dropped a touchdown, which never happened before. There was a play where Kanate Monkfield broke up the seam perfectly into the defense, and Eli Holstein skipped the ball to him. And if he hits him, he takes off run. That's probably a touchdown, and it flips the entire game around. I don't think that this has been as much of a scheme issue as much as it's been a skill issue for Pitt offense.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and this is a team that I think has kind of a deep bag as far as a playbook goes. I mean, they've told us that it's not necessarily about adding or installing new stuff. It's about picking the stuff that they have installed
Right.
throughout the season, throughout training camp, and saying, okay, this stuff is going to work against this defense or whatever. I agree with you. I think it's been an execution problem, not necessarily a scheme problem. I mean, just we've talked about it, like the drops, the penalties, the protection issues, Holstein's inaccuracy, especially against Virginia. There are a lot of easy plays out there for them to make. I don't think they need to add any more kind of zone or man busters. They've just got to make the plays that are in front of them.
Agreed. And when you look at how the offense executes, I mean, defenses aren't doing anything special. They're switching into zones. They're saying, "Hey, Eli, carve us up," and he's not. And then when he is carving them up, there's drops. And when and then even when he can't get to it, it's because the pressure's letting up too much. Pitt has to find consistency, and that's going to require strong practices these weeks. And they got a big opponent in Clemson on Saturday. Pat Narduzzi saying in the Monday press conference that this is going to be their toughest opponent that they've had all year. It'd be a heck of a time for a big turnaround. But if they don't get one, Pitt could fall to 7-3, and then big questions with their last two games coming up if they're going to spoil a 7-0 start and then just lose out, kind of blowing up all the momentum that they've had. They've already lost the momentum, but now you go from having to say, hey, if you finish, like this team could finish with 9 wins at least, and that's a huge turnaround from 3-9. But if you finish with 7 wins, I think it's going to change the entire tenor of what everyone thought this season could have been.
Yeah, people are going to ask questions about the strength of schedule. I mean, how difficult was it to earn those 7 wins in the first part of the year? And once they hit a really tough part of their schedule, you can see them start to waver a little bit. So people are going to be asking questions about that as well.
And the best way to get them to not ask those questions is to play better on the field. We're going to be at practice. If you're watching this, we were at practice Tuesday morning. We're asking questions of players and coaches Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Pat Narduzzi with his end of week press conference on Thursday, and then getting you ready for Pitt Clemson noon Saturday. But before then, remember that Backyard Brawl returns right here to Peterson Events Center, where the Pitt basketball team will be taking on the West Virginia Mountaineers. Both teams right now undefeated. West Virginia with one more game against Iona. Get all that coverage from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com, from your Pitt reporters, Christopher Carter, Stephen Thompson. Thanks for tuning in for another Pitt mailbag. Thank you for all the questions from all of our people that sent in. Please send in questions anytime you have anything you want us to discuss. We'll discuss more with you all in the next Pitt mailbag episode right here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's podcast channel. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.